Hello everybody, welcome back to my corner of the world where we talk about life and we live it together. This week's video is going to be kind of a combination of my top 3 things that I've learned while working in ministry, as well as some behind the scenes work of our virtual 2020 VBS. Woo! I thought this would be a great combination video because we're going to be recording all of our footage this week for the worship portion of our VBS. This year that's going to be going totally virtual. It's going to be really different, but we're super excited that we still get to give the kids a chance to worship Jesus, do crafts, but all from the comfort and safety of their own homes this year. And we're kind of making it a home party or a block party where kids can invite their friends in their neighborhood, and it's just going to be super fun. So we'll throw in some footage from that as well. But this week, I just wanted to chat about just some things that I've learned while working at churches. I've volunteered in churches ever since I was probably 13 years old. I started in my youth band and then progressed up to the main service in my high school years, and then now in college. I was an intern at Living Streams Church in Phoenix, and now I have been working part-time at the church for about 3 years now. And so it's so exciting that I work at a church and I love my job. I not only get to work in the main service and lead worship there, but I also have the privilege of working for high school, junior high, and children's ministries too. So I get to choreograph fun dances for children, but I also get to put together worship teams, and I have people I work with to make schedules for the rotation of worship leaders we have in our junior high and high school ministries too. It's an extremely rewarding job. I would say that out of all the jobs I've had, I love working at a church. And there are a lot of ups and downs when working at a church, but I have my 3 major things that I think I have learned, not only in my time working for Living Streams, but as an intern, as well as just volunteering in general. A lot of good and a lot of bad, but overall it is an extremely rewarding job, and I'm so blessed that I get to work on a church staff and be a part of that family. So if there is anyone out there like me, you probably grew up in the church, you probably love worship and worship teams and being a part of those bands, and that's so awesome. But if you're someone who is interested in being on a worship team or participating on a church staff when you're kind of younger, or you're just looking to get involved on a worship team, one of the first things that I would give advice about in relation to being on a church staff or being part of a worship team is that the underbelly of ministry is not glamorous. A lot of you have probably watched YouTube videos of like Stephanie Gretzinger on Bethel leading this awesome song, or someone from Jesus Culture, all these Hillsong worship music videos. So a lot of the time people might see that and think that that is kind of what ministry is all about, that that's the main point of ministry, or that is how glamorous it always is, and they see just the outside of ministry, which isn't bad. It's awesome and it's so beautiful and it's so fun to be able to have those big moments. But behind the scenes, ministry is quite different. The main thing is that people who work at churches are just people. They're people like you and me who have emotions, who have feelings, who have attitudes, who have sin. And compared to a corporate job where people just meet and they talk about or debrief about whatever the company's going through, compared to a church, people who work at churches are typically a lot more honest. They're people who bring their emotion and their feelings into the meeting, and that's because church is vulnerable, right? Like, church is supposed to be the place where you can bring your raw emotion and your raw feelings to a meeting and be honest about what you're experiencing. A lot of our pastors are very adamant about mental health, and we'll get to that in a minute, but if you're bringing your true self, that's what a lot of pastors want, is people who on their staff are honest and who bring their best or all of themselves to a meeting so that we can all be honest and all share what we're going through, or share how we truly feel about what we're trying to bring to the church, because what we're bringing to the congregation is real authenticity. And so you have to bring your raw emotions and your vulnerability, right, when you're planning those kinds of things. And so I would say that meetings at churches are probably more intense or more vulnerable because you're having people bring their full self to the meeting. Along with the not glamorous underbelly of ministry is work is actually hard. Once again, you're dealing with real people. You're in an occupation where For me, I am dealing with high school students and junior high students who are going through, normal high school and junior high things that are really tough. Things like suicidal thoughts, eating disorders, depression, really heavy, hard things that a lot of kids these days struggle with. You're a comfort and you're a leader for those people. And so the work is difficult, and not necessarily difficult with your hands, but difficult with your heart. It's just it can be very emotionally draining. If you're someone like me who can be more empathetic, it's very difficult to not carry the weight of other people's pain and other people's sin on yourself, when really we're supposed to lay it at Jesus' feet. But when you're a leader, it can be hard to differentiate those things. And so the underbelly of ministry is just very not glamorous. And sometimes it's fun, worship nights when you're all partying together. But a lot of the time, and I would say 80 to 90% of the time, it is hard digging in the ground work, and not just in other people, but in yourself, because you want to stay healthy too. It is constant digging too inside of yourself to make sure that you're healthy as well. The second thing I would say that I have learned, one of my favorite things about ministry and working for churches, is that they really push people over production. Worship and production workers or people really rely heavily on inspiration, which means that time to rest and recuperate and feel inspired again is extremely important to continue doing our job. And so hopefully you serve a pastor, or if you're wanting to get into ministry, that pastor really values rest, because creatives need that. We need that rejuvenation. We need that refreshment so that we can be fresh for the next thing that God is speaking, and that we can be fully invested in the next thing. And if we're not rested and we don't feel like we're being taken care of, then that creativity can be squashed. You really can't force or just produce creativity. It has to be brought out of a place of peace. So if you don't have that, it can be difficult to produce that. In our worship team, we call it the grumpies, if someone definitely has not had enough rest. And so we can tell when someone just has not had enough sleep or has just been working way too hard. We just kind of make sure that we're all okay. Hey, are you grumpy? Do you just need to be left alone today? Do you need to not be around people? Do you need a coffee? Let me buy you coffee. We really just check in on each other and make sure that we're all okay. Another awesome thing that our church does is that our church allows pastors who have been working for 7 years consecutively to have a 3-month sabbatical. And our worship pastor just recently did this last summer, and he came back so refreshed, and it was so awesome because he just came kind of gung-ho to continue his job and to continue doing well. And I just really appreciate that our church does that, because we really do value the importance of resting. I'm really, really lucky that I attend a church and that I'm part of a church that values me over what I can produce. And I think that's really special. And it's going to keep me healthy in my long-term goals for ministry. And it's also going to keep the people that I serve healthy, because I'm healthy too. The last thing is kind of obvious, but there's specific reasons why I bring it up. And the third reason is staying close to Jesus is definitely your source of strength. Ministry requires a lot of grace, and not just for yourself, but obviously for other people. Like I mentioned earlier, people deal with a lot of things. They deal with heavy things, burdening things, stressful things. And if you're someone like me who takes on those things because you love people, it can be difficult. And so it requires lots of grace. And the only way that you can continue doing your job well is to stay close to Jesus. You will mess up is the big thing. You need to stay close to Jesus in those times so that you don't take on that failure as your identity. If your voice cracks on the platform, or when you're on the platform and you may say something completely heretical. Those times are very necessary for you to lean into Jesus and his presence and remind yourself who you are. Remember that your value does not lie in your production, your perfection, which is not even possible, but also your failures. It does not lie in how well you do your job. Jesus wants you solely, and he wants who you are. And when you stay close to him, you can walk in that freedom. Along with staying close to Jesus, you will get criticized. In any sort of fame or limelight or spotlight that any leader or well-known person is, and I'm not saying I'm well-known, but being in leadership, you're looked at. you are sometimes scrutinized, if I'm being honest. People like to judge, and it's unfortunate, but it's true. And especially in an occupation like worship leading, where you're using musical and vocal and instrumental talents, people can just say what they think. There's kind of a joke, you know, with our creative team about comment cards, like, oh, there's another comment card, someone thinks the lights are too bright, or someone thought the music was too loud. And you really just get that stuff. If you work at a church, you're gonna get scrutinized, you're gonna get people saying things they don't like or giving their opinion. And so it's super important to stay close to Jesus, because I've had older ladies tell me that I sound like I'm screaming when I sing. I've had people come up and tell me how they do not like how much I move on the platform when I'm worshiping, or how I pray too quietly into the microphone. And most of these are behind my back. I mean, some of them people actually come up to me, but you kind of find out secondhand, like, oh, that person thinks I scream when I sing. And if you let those comments get to you, it can be really draining. And so this is probably one of the biggest things I've learned, is that people's opinions, your own failure, or anything that you associate major emotion with, do not let it become your identity. Don't let that become the thing that you think about when you continue leading people into worship, or when you continue participating in being on a staff at church. Because overall, you really just grow tougher skin the more it happens to you. And it helps when you lean into Jesus and he gets to remind you who you are, and he gets to remind you that he loves your voice, that he reminds you that he loves how wildly crazy you dance in his presence, and that the person who doesn't like how much you dance, that's their thing to deal with, right? I've had to really let those things go, because it would really bother me and it would hurt. But when I go back to God's presence and he reminds me how much he loves watching me worship him, and he loves how much I get how passionate I get when I sing to him, then I go, okay, like, I'm doing this for you ultimately. Like, they can come if they want to, but I'm here for you, Jesus, and I'm gonna continue worshiping you. To recap, number one, the underbelly of ministry is not glamorous. It's not what you see on YouTube. It's not always what you see on videos and blah, blah, blah. Number two, always make sure that you are caring about people over the production of the church. And three, make sure that you're staying close to Jesus. If you plan on being a part of a worship team or being a part of a church staff, please stay close to Jesus, because he is your source of strength. He is your source of creativity, and he's the one that's going to remind you who you are and what kind of leader he's called you to be. So that's all I have for this portion of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, but I wanted to show and capture some footage of our behind the scenes worship video virtual VBS week. This was a super fun time, and I'm so blessed to be a part of a church that really wants to invest in children. I've had the privilege of being the one to oversee children's worship for a few years now, and we've done some crazy awesome things. We have really enhanced our children's worship. It used to be, well, on a regular basis, it really wasn't anything. They didn't really have worship. And then I was given the opportunity to be the person to oversee VBS worship back in 2018, and I redid the whole thing. I made sure that there was loud music, that there was choreography, that there was, you know, Britney Spears headset microphones, and we were up there just having a good time. And that encouraged the church to really change the way they did children's worship. And so I have been in that process of kind of revamping the way they do children's worship, and unfortunately it has to be virtual this year, which is not as fun. It'll still be super great to give the kids the chance to worship at home and be a part of that with their families, right in the comfort of their own home. So we're really excited to give the kids the chance to do that, and we're just, as a church, we're just learning what it's like to be totally virtual in this season of quarantine. It's been, and I think maybe I can add to this video with that aspect, like, this quarantine has been really, really crazy for churches. And one of my favorite quotes, I think, that I have heard or read during this season, according to churches, is that the church never closed. That you can't close the church, because we're the church. You're basically just closing a building. And it's been fun to be a part of a church that is so trustworthy of us, even younger people, to post things and to do things like I started this YouTube channel, you know, to still be preachers and encouragers and exhorters of the word, and still participate in ministry and be just a part of of blessing people through the internet. I would love to hear your guys' suggestions on videos and what I should do next. I love making these and I'm gonna continue making them every week. I have a lot of ideas, but I wanna hear what you guys wanna hear and I wanna talk about what you guys wanna talk about. So let me know, please like and subscribe, but we're gonna go into the next portion of the video and look at some footage from VBS. Well, thanks everybody for coming to my corner of the world and chatting about life and living it together. Thanks for watching this far. If you made it this far, you're the best. We will see you next week.